Okay, it's 1300. The queues have filled up. We've got 7 people here today, it looks like, for the EU time zone of the June World Championship circuit. Today we will be seeing 2 different Swiss tournaments in PC movie format. One right now in the EU time zone, and then there will be another one at 1700 for the American time zone. And yeah, Mazdraf has got that first buy, and now we've got our first 3 games here. So we're going to have Best Mellis up against, who's the reigning world champion 2 years in a row, up against Wingfoot81, E. Nolan versus Chadwick, and Quincy Jones versus Rutil, while Mazdraf takes the first buy. All right, very standard opening here from Best Mellis. He always likes to bid 3 or 4, and then usually he pulls himself a Sam to peel those burdens off, but it looks like instead what we've got is the recently errated Sam, so we recently issued some buff errata to some of the more underwhelming hobbits in PC Fellowship. So we have Merry Horticulturist here, who used to be able to pull just Farmer Maggot, which isn't all that useful in the long term. And so now instead he can take an ally into hand once per turn from your draw deck. And then Sam was upgraded from just being able to pull Build a Pony to being able to pull any Shire item into your hand. We've got an interesting start on both of these sides. The fact that we've got a mono Shire start from Best Mellis himself, and then Wingfoot is running. What is this? We've got Gimli, Dwarf of Erebor, once again errated, so that you also draw a card every time that you use his ability to stack something underneath your deck. You've got the V1 Pippin. You've got Galadriel Lady Redeemed, of course, and then we have Merry Friend of Sam. This is not what I would expect from a PC movie setup, but here we go. We have Merry being used to pull Tom Bombadil out. That is quite the turn 1 setup. Best Mellis really likes to throw as many things down as he can on that very first turn, and try to take advantage of that fact that everything's going to be roaming, and he might be able to get away with being greedy right there at the start. So as PC Movie is a multipath format, both of these individuals are running Path of the Fellowship, and so both of them are going to be using their Fellowship block sites. So we have Wingfoot here dropping a little bit of Moria Swarm with a Golem mixed in, maybe what he's looking for. Definitely got a bit of a swarmy instance here with that Backstabber. Only worth anything at all, really, when you do have other orcs, other Moria orcs on the field. Darkest Darkness not being used to exert the Ring Bearer. Tom Bombadil, having a native home 2 site, is able to come in and smack Gollum in the face. He's going to be completely overwhelmed there. So we've got our copies of Everyone Knows coming in, and a Promise. So a Promise is going to boost Sam and Frodo, and then we've got Everyone Knows going to be boosting Merry and Pippin. So we might have ourselves quite a bit of a party going on up here. Best Mellis' deck, even with all the stuff that he's played, is just now getting down to 64 cards. So it's a little bit more than the bare minimum. Wingfoot, on the other hand, appears to be running a deck that is much more slim, much more standardly slim. A lot of high-level players prefer to ride the line there at that bare minimum, just so that their deck can be as consistent as possible. Couldn't be me. I have to stuff everything I can into my deck. I can't operate at a bare minimum of efficiency. But I'm not the one here playing for the World Championship now, am I? As a reminder to our viewers, everyone here that is participating here in the circuit is going to earn points towards their circuit score, and that circuit score is ultimately going to determine who gets invited to the World Championship later this year. Now, wait a minute. What the heck did I miss while I was doing all that talking? Because somehow Tom did not kill Gollum. Oh, he exerted 3 times with Ettenmoors. Okay, that makes sense. So because he was able to exert twice, pump himself up to 9 strength, that would be enough to not get killed by that 14 strength Tom Pompidou. Now, interestingly, what is going on here? Basmelis is using Ettenmoors to exhaust his own companions? He's brought Frodo all the way down to 1 health. Now, I could definitely understand why he would do that if he was going for a sacrificial play. But he's only got 1 burden. He got 2 of them peeled off. 2 of them from Tom getting played. I don't quite understand why he would want to have all that, all those wounds on his ring bearer. Unless he's just hoping to... He wants to prime Frodo and have him ready to be sacrificed until later? And just not heal him at the sanctuary or something? I'm confused by that move. I guess we'll have to see what the man is cooking. He is our world champion. I'm sure he knows what he's doing, but that is a very strange move to be pulling. Especially when he can't plan for that because this is his opponent's site too. What a mystery. Well, Wingfoot's fellowship phase has started, and he's starting to get set up. He's got that Consorting with Wizards on his Bilbo Ringbearer, which is a classic combo to now make sure that his Ringbearer cannot take wounds. This card was originally printed to be used with the Bilbo ally, but when a Bilbo Ringbearer was later printed, it just keeps working for that. So now he's using the ability there to exert multiple times to remove Twilight to try and choke his opponent out. Quite the opposite of Basmelis' own strategy. These 3 wounds won't be so bad if he goes into a sanctuary because he can just peel them back off, so it may be worth it. We have 3 for the Elven Kings coming down, which is a V1 card that says that every time you move, you may spot an Elven or Gandalf ring to place a card from hand beneath your draw deck and draw a card. Oh, we have quite a bit of below the deck stacking going on here between Gimli and 3 for the Elven Kings. There must be some sort of specific shadow bomb that is being set up here, because most of the time when you put stuff on the bottom of your deck, it is either because you are going to reveal them from one card or another, or because you want to stash them away until sites 7 through 9, so that you've got an absolutely stacked hand full of shadow cards, hopefully with specific shadow cards, so that you can specify exactly what it is you're going to be going up against. Now, Basmelis is playing Beasterlings, it appears. We have Easterling Captain here, who is able to spot 2 burdens and remove 2 Twilight to make an Easterling Strength +2. Or if you have 4 burdens, you can make him Strength +3. Or if you can spot 6 burdens, you can make him Strength +4. This guy can soak up just about any amount of Twilight to turn it into a kill. We've also got that combo with Easterling Polearm. While you can spot 2 burdens, bearer cannot take wounds, and while you can spot 5 burdens, bearer is damage +1. So this guy cannot be removed from the field very easily at all. Now we have this interesting move here. We have Bilbo going up against the Easterling Captain. He can't take any wounds. He has to exert once with Ettenmoors, and then we have Pippin being used to pump him up and make him, or actually in this case, there's only 2 Frodo signets on the field, so he's able to prevent him from being overwhelmed unless his strength is tripled, but he'll have to do that again unless he's willing to sacrifice somebody. And he does have a few sacrificial individuals here, although the fact that Nenya is being used for 3 rings makes Galadriel a little less disposable than she might otherwise be, depending on what exactly Wingfoot's plan here is. Man, this is such an interesting setup. I almost don't want to look away. I'm just going to hop over and take a look at these other two decks real quick, or the other two games. So we have Chadwick running Elves and Men, it looks like, versus Enelin running Men and Elves. So it looks like we have a bit of a mirror match on that one. It appears to be a Balrog Moria deck up against perhaps an Elven ally, or we haven't seen the Shadow. And then on the third game over here, Quincy Jones versus Ratil, we have, I think that's Men and Dwarf. Men and Dwarf with preparations up against a solo Smeagol deck. So Quincy Jones running some very off-meta off-meta choices here. This should be a very interesting series. So I'm going to swap back over here to this Basmelos versus Wingfoot game, though. Let's see. We have Careful Study being used. Spot an elf and discard 3 cards from hand to reconcile your hand. And we have Tidings of Erebor. So 2 copies of Tidings of Erebor being used to draw a total of 6 cards. And Careful Study. Interesting. So Wingfoot is really digging for a very specific combo, which presumably is then going to be used later on in the game. What an interesting match. This is like there's nothing standard for me to point at. These are these are very very off the wall decisions here. So we have Rosie Cotton being used to heal up Sam. We have another copy of A Promise coming out. Each one of these granting both Sam and Frodo +1 strength. Let's see, 3 Monstrous Trolls coming out to, well, I think that's really mostly there as a tail, so that all the other tail interacting concepts can interact with each other. We have Sam being used to pull a frying pan with Build a Pony being played on him. There's Farmer Maggot coming out off of Mary's ability, and then Pippin here preventing all the tails from being played. We do have a little bit of choke here. We have Build a Pony and we have a Talent for Not Being Seen. So between the two of those and the second copy of Talent, once that comes out, it looks like Basmelos' strategy here is to set up an incredibly large support area in Region 1 and then hopefully choke his opponent out as he moves down. Normally, he's extremely fast at running down the site path, but he only went 1 site at a time here in Region 1, which is very not what he's usually up to. So Goblin Sneak being used to stack the bottom of the deck. More sneaks. Yeah, Wingfoot is going all in on this Underdeep's stack the very bottom of the deck with a very specific setup. I have to wonder though what it might be. Normally you could do something like this to perhaps do a Lost to the Goblins bomb, and perhaps Basmelos sees it coming and he's going to, try to sacrifice, well, except, let's see, Lost to the Goblins, let's look it up over here. Response: if the ring bearer exerts or takes a wound, discard a card from the top of your draw deck for each Moria minion you can spot. For each shadow card discarded in this way, add a burden. Limit 3 burdens. There we go. Okay, so he saw that Dark of Darkness. He sees the Lost of the Goblins bomb coming. So he exerted Frodo until he can't be exerted anymore, and so he's just going to keep him exhausted to ensure that Dark of Darkness can't be used to trigger that, meaning that the only way to trigger Lost of the Goblins is going to be wounding him, which, since the ring is there, is not very easy to do. So that may make him impervious to the Lost of the Goblins. That's interesting. Beastling coming out once more. We have Small Hope on the table, which now makes it so this is just a floating pump, so you can discard this to make him strength +2. And normally you would use this to also get yourself up to that 2 burden threshold, but Wingfoot has so helpfully already stacked himself up to 5 or to 4 burdens. So that is unnecessary. So Raider Bow going on Easterling Captain. So he's going to be ambush 5, meaning that both times that he gets assigned by the Free People's player, he's going to add 5 Twilight to the pool, meaning that if he tries to play that Dwarven event again, the one in the regroup phase, let him draw 3 cards, that's going to be blocked because your opponent can remove 3 to prevent that. So that's going to make that untenable. Also, wounds coming out because of the Raider Bow making him an archer. Things are looking pretty dire here, I think, for Wingfoot. I think somebody might be dying here. Between the Twilight coming out and being usable for the for Easterling Captain, so ambush 5 means that there's going to be 2 uses of his ability. There's 4 burdens on the table, so that's plus 3 strength, meaning a grand total of plus 6 that can be pulled off of that can be converted from Twilight into strength there. That puts him up to 17 strength. That's enough to overwhelm anybody on the field, regardless of Pippin's intervention. This might be an early end, unless Wingfoot has some way to thread the needle here. Okay, Mary being the first sacrificial lamb, and Pippin being the other. A bloody, bloody day. Using that ability just in case he did the math wrong. But even if he had done the math wrong, the just the regular old wound from Easterling Captain was going to be enough to cause that problem. At the start of each regroup phase, you may discard 2 cards from hand to draw the same number of cards. Once again, cycling extremely heavily through this deck. Wingfoot is already more than halfway through his deck, and here we go. That's what I was talking about. He plays that Tidings of Erebor, but because there was so much Twilight already in the pool because of the ambush, it gets blocked. Shadow player using the remove 3 clause to prevent it. While it's slowed down over there, let's just take a look at the other one. We have Estelle over here with elves. We have Sam having come out at one point to peel off a bunch of burdens, it looks like. We have almost a pure elf on this side with Estelle. So actually, maybe it was not quite so elves and men so much as elves and Estelle on both of these sides. A mirror match either way, with the V2 Arwen on Chadwick's side. And here we see Chadwick utilizing the V2 Balrog, getting revealed here with Terror Edits coming. And from Deepest Dungeon, revealing the Balrog to add a threat, and Terror is coming, revealing the Balrog to add 2. You've also got multiple copies of Dark Places coming out, each one making each unique Moria minion strength +1. So the Balrog here, with no other weapons, being straight up pumped all the way up to 20 strength here. And this particular Balrog is quite the one-man army. Oh, here we go. So we have Fill with Fear being used to discard Aragorn's bow to make sure that no shenanigans get up to snipe the Balrog off the table. And each time a minion takes a wound, you may remove 1 to add a threat. There's plenty of Twilights here on the table. And then each time the Free People's player uses a skirmish special ability during a skirmish involving the Balrog, you may wound a companion it is skirmishing. Meaning that either you tank this guy with your face, or you take wounds. He's a very scary version of the Balrog. So hopping back over to the Basmalis game, we have Hobbit Hospital coming in and healing people up. We've got him moving on to Site 4 with not a whole lot of Twilight, but he is extremely set up here. This has got to be half of his Free People's cards in this deck. So here, for instance, we have the Balrog here up against Círdan. Círdan's got an ability, it has been nerfed, but is commonly used. If he uses it, however, he's going to get wounded again by the Balrog, making it very costly to utilize. Here comes an event, and an event is a way to get around the Balrog's issue there. Let's see. So we have Durin's Tower being discarded. Discard this condition to make a unique Moria minion, strength +3. Pumping him up. Trying to get Kirdan overwhelmed, which is incredibly ironic. That is Kirdan's shtick, is to make everybody strength -50 and then overwhelm them himself. But by using those events, manages to squeak by. Damage +1 on the Balrog, resulting in 2 wounds. If Kirdan goes up again, he's almost certainly dead. But now we have Estelle. Now Estelle does have the ability to discard an Elven card from hand to make him strength +2, and if you have lots of Elven cards, but here we go, he gets that extra wound from the Balrog for doing so. It may be just enough to get him outside of overwhelm range, and with that Durin's Tower gone, he's not necessarily in danger of it happening again. I don't know if there are any Moria skirmish events that pump the Balrog. Still, very scary move over there. So hopping back to the Basmelis versus Wingfoot game, we have Easterling Regiment coming out. Each time he wins a skirmish, you may add 1 Twilight for each burden. And wow, we have quite a few burdens getting racked up over here. I imagine that those were, let's see, we started at 4 last time we looked. There's only 3 more burdens that have been added since then. I bet those are just straight up skirmish losses. Although there could have also been some events played. What is that one? Easterling event that will add a burden. So far we haven't seen any other companions get played. It was just those starting 5, 2 of them sacrificed. And here we find Galadriel, Lady Redeemed, finally being burned. Interesting that, well, I suppose you do have small hope here, so it looks like Gimli is also in overwhelm range. So Tale of the Great Ring could be used to keep Bilbo alive once. But Easterlings also have events, and Basmelis, having seen it, I'm sure, will hope to keep one around. And yeah, that small hope being used to now push that regiment over the overwhelm threshold for Gimli, and away it goes. Yeah, this Lost to the Goblins bomb has got to get set off soon. All the deck stacking elements have now been stripped from Wingfoot's support area. So we have a consorting coming out on the ally Bilbo, as was, originally intended. We have that full art Hobbit sword coming out on Merry. Merry being used to pull another Hobbit party guest. So the Hobbit hospital goes around. Party guest exerting to heal the other allies, and the other allies predominantly having an exert to heal somebody effect. Interesting. Was that Thror's map being used? No. Why was Thror's map used? They're both on Path of the Fellowship. There's only one Site 5 that there could possibly be. Was it just getting into the habit of doing that, just so he doesn't make the mistake when it's up against a different site path? Not sure there. Not sure I quite understand that one. So this is a full-blown Hobbit hospital here. This is just about every Hobbit ally of note. Host of Moria coming out on Site 5, pulling something from the discard pile, pulling out that sneak that's going to once again stack another guy. Yeah, Darker's Darkness coming out and being unable to affect that completely exhausted Frodo. Yeah, I questioned what was going on, but no, Basmelis saw exactly what this deck was cooking. And way back on Site 2, used the tool that his enemy had given him to exhaust Frodo, and then he's left him exhausted ever since. Poor Frodo. Yeah, Wingfoot may want to remove that particular site from there, because if he hadn't have given that to Basmelis, then Basmelis would have had to more carefully lose skirmishes until he was exhausted, which is a trickier path to navigate through, right? And it would have offered some opportunities to maybe utilize some of those Lost of the Goblins in the run up to the end of the game. But no, on Site 2, this entire deck was neutered even before the Free People side had been fully stripped. Yeah, this is definitely going to be an easy win for Basmelis, I think. He read his opponent's mind and systematically dismantled him, which of course is the play that the level of play that we expect to see from our world champion. Okay, hopping over to the Chadwick and Enelin game. Let's see. We have Easterling Lieutenant out on the side of Enelin, so maybe Beasterlings is making a comeback. We have a few different. That's two different Easterling decks so far. Discard to heal being used for both Estelle and Círdan. We have Gilgalad coming out at the last minute, that time-traveling elf. And then hopping over to the Retiel Quincy Jones game, it looks like Quincy is taking a leaf out of Mozdrev's book and playing a tentacle deck. Now, this is not a corruption deck. This is not Mozdrev's. This looks like it's actually aiming to utilize Watcher in the Water with his damage +1 and his strength boosting to all the other tentacles. And in theory, Saranon Dam. But I did receive a bug report the other day that I need to get fixed. But this is a fairly damaging little group of minions with Watcher in the Water making all of these damage +1. So we have strength 8, 8, 6 from the tentacles, that's going to be 4 wounds. Oh well, +2 because Thrashing Tentacle is fierce. Unless they have a way to snipe out that Watcher, that will be quite a few wounds coming down. So Slake Thirst being used, and then Preparations is now ready and waiting to take that Watcher out and reduce the total amount of wounds that's going to be handed out because of him. And when the strength bonus from that Watcher goes away, the rest of the tentacles are going to become pretty pathetic. Oh, interesting. Is he just going to pump Gimli all the way up and just kill him the old-fashioned way? No need to use Preparations? Yeah, Realm of Dweller Elf being used to discard cards off the top of his deck and use those to make him strong. We're all the way on Site 6, and Retiel's deck is only now coming down to 62, so he must have started with a very big deck, relying on the self-milling aspects of Realm and a handful of other Dwarven cards that allow you to really discard a lot of things. So yeah, it looks like each of these tentacles is going to go down in turn. Utilizing Realm of Dweller to pump him all the way up to Overwhelm range, because if he doesn't, this over here, Out of Dark Waters, says every time that tentacle takes a wound, you may stack that tentacle here. So to prevent those tentacles from returning, interestingly, all the resources are being burned here to push everybody to that Overwhelm range, just to make sure that Out of Dark Waters does not get stacked. Now he's going to have a harder time doing that with Writhing Tentacle here. 6 to 6. Writhing is actually going to win, and so because it didn't take a wound, it's not going to get stacked. And Writher is one that you definitely don't want going on the waters over here. Preparations being used, stacking itself up, turning all that vitality that's about to be healed at the sanctuary into restoring everything down here. We have a Slight Thirst being regenerated and 2 battle tested. So because we have Sindri here, you may play Dwarven Skirmish events stacked on Dwarven conditions as if from hand. This is essentially a floating +8 that can be pulled out as much as needed. Slake Thirst being used to exert a character twice, exert a minion twice, and then Preparations itself being used to wound things. Yeah, that's quite a potent combo there. Up against his opponents, Smeagol, Bearer of Great Secrets. Solo Smeagol, as we can see. A bunch of things being thrown on him to allow him to go alone. Out of Sight and Shot coming out. So we have each time a companion is played, the free people's player must exert a companion. That's probably not going to matter. Spot a Nazgul and discard this condition to play a Nazgul from your discard pile. So that may be useful down the line. We have Pale Crown here, although it's probably not going to find much use. One of the major ways that Solo Smeagol works is that, well, you're choking the entire time because there's only one Twilight being played for, or being put into the Twilight pool every time you move for your single companion that you have set up. And then we have all of these conditions that are granting +1 strength a little here and there, bringing Smeagol up to a respectable 8. And then we also have the ability to discard cards from hand to wound a minion he's skirmishing, just to keep him alive. Now this, I don't understand why it's there, except for things like Nasty. It makes Smeagol strength +1 for each Golem card you can spot. So Nasty adds to that, but otherwise doesn't actually have anything that is useful for him. But being able to beat a Nazgul at his own game, maybe that's reward enough. Now Quincy is moving here out to Site 7, so he is past the Sanctuary. So it looks like he is being very careful with his vitality. He's only got that 3 vitality, then the rest he's going to have to rely on turning into burdens. And with such a weight to carry, he's going to have to anticipate needing it ahead of time. He can't use it as a reaction. So it looks like he's going to lose his skirmish there and walk away with 1 wound. So let's go hop back over to these other tables. All right, so we have Chadwick on Site 9, all the way at the very end. We have a bunch of Nazgul coming out. This looks like it's not quite going to be enough to pull the rabbit out of the hat. There are far too many large elves and men sitting here. It looks like that one is probably game in Chadwick's favor. And then looking over here, we see just the the remnants of a Balrog having recently smeared Bilbo along the ground. Yeah, there's this went exactly the way that one could have expected. But that's an interesting observation that Basmalis has that Balrog in his deck, so it's not to be underestimated. So threats are coming out. There were 5 threats, and someone died. Galadriel died due to Chadwick himself discarding Nenya to kill her and apply the threat wounds. Am I reading that right? Okay, it was because Inquea... Okay, so Inquea was going to kill Galadriel, and rather than let that happen, he discarded it himself to get the maneuver maneuver action out of it, and then applied all those threat wounds. So actually, this is much closer than it was a moment ago. With Gilgalad getting taken out, was that it? Gilgalad taking wounds, and then... Alright, and then Inquea being used to knock him off the board. Now, there may not be enough fierce people going on, and Glorfindel using his own ability to reveal... It must have been a very... Yeah, reveals Sauron off the top of the deck, so there's our classic telepathy strategy. Absolutely overwhelming that 0 strength Nazgul and getting him off the field. And that was one of the only real threats left with the damage +1 and the fierce. But Aragorn also handily taking care of Inquea. Yeah, there's nothing left here. There are plenty of companions, and even with Sam on the table, there is an emergency out there if it was needed. And it's not, it looks like. So that's going to be a win for Chadwick. We have... which is going to be leaving us here with just this one game. Ratiel up against Quincy Jones. So Ratiel getting set up even more with these self-milling cards, Beneath the Mountains, Ever My Heart Rises. Decks all the way down to 32 cards, which has got to be about a quarter of what it started at. Quincy Jones figuring out what exactly he's going to do. He's got quite a glut here of 22 Twilight, which is just underneath the flood insurance range for Region 3. So in set V2, we released a series of flood insurance cards. Let's see, let's search for V2. The names are escaping me at the moment. And so this particular cycle of cards all follow the same pattern of giving you an option to remove 3 to draw 2 cards, or you can spot 18 Twilight tokens, or 25 if you're in Region 3, and remove 3, or remove some amount of Twilight to do some big effect. So in this case, you would remove 3 to draw 8 cards. If in Region 1, this action can be performed from your draw deck. And so it's intended to prevent large amounts of flooding in the very first region, but you can also use it throughout the rest of the game if somebody hits you with quite a bit. So for instance here, we have 32 Twilight on the table. If he had one or more of these cards in his hand, they would be particularly useful at times like this. I had the feeling I missed a big play. All that Twilight going unspent. This is this can be a major part of why a shadow might falter, is if it's unable to really take advantage of free people's going off the rails and utilizing all of those resources to build themselves up. And if you aren't able to even spend that Twilight, then things are not going to go well. Wait a minute, was that a... Still far ahead, playing the Fellowship's next site, so he specifically chose Slag Mounds. Each time a companion is killed, add a burden. So just making sure that it's going to be a useless Site 9. So it looks like both of these players, I forgot to look, both of them are running Journey of the King, so both of them are on the King path. So it was a mirror match in this case. Mirror matches across the board, I think, actually. So we had Path of the Fellowship, yeah, everyone had a mirror match this first round. Gollum coming up against Smeagol. Burning away the burdens to add a couple more Twilight, which isn't often the effect that you see utilized from Gollum here. But he's really looking to try and get that overwhelm. We have that out of sight and shot being used. That was played a few sites ago now to pull Nelia out. There's 2 wounds on the ring bearer, so he is fierce and damage +1. We have Otsia able to transfer blade tip, not that that really matters. But since there is a Pale Crown here, oh, this is going to be big. Pale Crown is going to come out. While bearers Twilight, characters skirmishing bearer do not receive strength or damage bonuses from cards they bear. That is going to absolutely be a big issue. Even if he plays nasty and gives him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh no, power according to his stature though. How many does he have? He's got to, yeah, you got to use that Pale Crown, get it on somebody. He's now at strength 3 because none of these. Oh, we got another power according to his stature. Does he have a third one? He's got a third one. Is it gonna be enough though? 3 power according to his statures. 3 paths is usually enough to take care of anything. But that Pale Crown coming in and giving +1 vitality to Nelia. And there it goes, discarding 3 cards from hand to wound. Solo Smeagol trotting his way all the way to Site 9. What an ending. And showing that Paths, has been a meta consideration ever since it was released way back in Set 1. And here we can see exactly why. Alright, so now let's take a look at the standings. So we have Basmelis, Quincy, and Chadwick each having won their games, Mosdref having received the bye, and Enolan, Wingfoot, and Ratil losing their games. So going in, we are probably going to see one of those 3 that lost their game also getting a bye, and then out of these top 4, we will see them assigned to each other. So we should see that here in just a moment. The system gives us 1 minute between rounds. That's enough time for anybody to take a break, all right? So the bye has been awarded to Ratil. So it looks like our matchups are going to be Enolan versus Wingfoot, Quincy versus Mosdref, and Basmelis versus Chadwick. Oops. Messing up my thing there. Okay, so that Nolan versus Wingfoot game, I'm going to move this over here. Let's see. So we have our Quincy versus Mosdref. Mosdref is the one person that we haven't seen yet because of the bye, and he's also the only person running Road to the Towers. So I wonder what he could have in store for us. While that game is waiting to spin up, we have Basmelis versus Chadwick here. We have that same 4 Hobbit strategy coming out. And in this case, we have Fellowship versus Fellowship once again. However, it's probably not going to be as straightforward a victory for Basmelis this time, since there's not necessarily going to be a Etten Moors versus a Lost of the Goblins combo that's going to be such a, I don't want to say simple solution. It is simple once you are aware of it, I suppose. So many things getting played out on turn 1. Let's see. So we have that Mithril Coat being pulled down from Sam. We have Bill the Pony. We have a talent for not being seen, Escape. Red Book of Westmarch. We have Everyone Knows and Tom Bombadil. And a Hobbit Sword. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Shire cards being played. 17 Twilight on the table. Which is, you may notice, 1 Twilight below what would trigger the flood insurance for 18 Twilight tokens. Basmelis is not being careless. He is not permitting his opponent to utilize one of those cards to smack him down. This particular one allows you to draw 8 cards, which, depending on your deck, may be what you need. But there are others that have different effects. There's one that allows you to take 4 conditions from your draw deck in the hand. Another one that allows you to play minions. In fact, I believe that's the Sauron one. Which one is it? Attention of the Eye. That's it. So this one is kind of an all-rounder. Spot 18 Twilight tokens to play up to 2 minions from your draw deck, costing 5 or more. Interestingly, so we have an Easterling regiment being reconciled away. I don't think that his opponent played anything at all. And Bestmelis decided to stop once again on Edmoors. A lot of people running Edmoors today. By a lot, I mean 2. So it looks like there was enough of a choke on Chadwick's side that Bestmelis didn't play anything at all. So we've got the same effect on both sides here for different reasons. Another copy of Anything Knows coming up. We have Sting coming down on Frodo with that wonderful Shire masterwork. And of course, all blinged out in foil. So 9 Twilight going into the Sanctuary. There may be a couple of things getting set up. So that would explain why Chadwick didn't play anything. That's right. We had this last game. He is playing that Balrog heavy Moria variant. And he probably did not want the Balrog to get completely wasted on Tom Bombadil, because Home 2 would have eaten that Balrog to the face with no problem. Desert Lord coming out, exerting Desert Lord to exert a companion. So handing around those, is it an unbound companion? To exert a companion, except the ring bearer. Interesting that he went for Pippin instead of Sam. If you hit Sam, then like having that exhausted Sam makes sure that Promise doesn't help you at all. Although perhaps it doesn't matter with this Strength 7 Pippin being able to take whatever can be handed at him. So while those two cross swords, let's hop over here to... Oh, not that one, sorry. Mozdref and Quincy. So Mozdref, it seems, is running a Gondor Wraiths deck. So we have the Erratted Swept Away that allows you to have that infamous effect that while you have initiative exhausted, Gondor Wraiths cannot take wounds. What we errated was adding the response: if a shadow card is about to discard this condition, discard 2 cards from hand to prevent that. This wasn't, and still kind of is really, a very brittle capstone to this strategy. If this card is not on the table, then your wraiths can be taken out very quickly, especially if they are all exhausted. Any sort of directed wounding or threat cascades or anything will just cause them to, well, be swept away. And Quincy with his solo Smeagol. So let's see what Mozdref has cooking on the shadow side. Oh, well, we don't even have to see. We've got that Outer Dark Waters already on the table. It is going to be a tentacle variant. Now, Mozdref went with a very good record in the PC Fellowship version of this tournament last month with a burden variant of the tentacle deck that focused entirely on adding burdens. And it may work pretty decently against Smeagol. A lot of Smeagol's effects add burdens, and I don't think that there's a whole lot of burden removal available to him. There are a couple of cards. Vile Tentacle coming out. This is one of the ones from V1 that makes tentacles a little more viable. Rather than self-discarding, it is strength -4 when not on a marsh, and then it has the ability to discard a Moria card from hand to make the Fellowship's current site gain marsh until the end of the turn. And so this allows him to play more tentacles. Now, the interesting thing about Mazdraf's Tentacle deck here is that it has two win conditions. It can either go for the burdens or it can try to go for a more swarmy aspect. And in this particular case, so many of the burdens come from Thrashing Tentacle losing skirmishes. Each time this minion loses a skirmish, add a burden, or two burdens if you cannot spot a burden. And up against a solo Smeagol, it's going to be a rare occasion where I think Smeagol outright wins the skirmishes, right? So I think Mazdraf is going to have to lean into the swarming aspects of this deck. So right now we have 6 + 6 + 7, so we're looking at 19 strength up against the 5 of Smeagol. Now if there's a nasty, that's going to be a +1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That will be just barely enough to bring him out of overwhelm range. And actually, one of the annoyances for Mazdraf here is that if he can't get wounds on his tentacles, then Out of Dark Waters doesn't get stacked up. So the rather perfunctory assignments going through here. There's only one person to assign to, so it doesn't really matter what minions are added first. Now, normally when you have a solo Smeagol setup, you start with some ring-bound rangers or some other sort of sacrificial companions that you can use, during this first few sites. And it's interesting to see that this is a true solo Smeagol with absolutely no helpers. $19-5. Does he have a nasty? He does have power according to his stature. Oh, this is well, this is going to be delightful. So it's going to wound each one of them one at a time, and each one is going to ask him, "Hey, Mazdraf, do you want to stack on Out of Dark Waters?" So he is going to stack the Vile Tentacle and keep that in his back pocket. So now he's going to be able to play that at any site to utilize its ability to grant it Marsh, so that his tentacles will be able to come back out again. Another power according to his stature, saving Smeagol, but adding a couple burdens, which is kind of what Mazdraf wants anyway, and because it is winning via wounds, all of those tentacles end up on the deck. So all those weaknesses that I was just telling you about, well, they didn't show up here. Oh, there we go. Maybe I spoke too soon about not having a lot of options. Not listening. If Smeagol wins a skirmish, heal him and remove two burdens. So I guess besides the fact that those tentacles have been stacked up over there on Out of Dark Waters, Smeagol has been reset. There is, as far as you can tell, there appear to be almost no resources burned. However, he had that very big win there on the last game with 3 copies of power according to his stature, and now 2 of them have been burned. So he's not going to be able to utilize them later. So we now have 2 copies of Swept Away, which only really gets you the redundancy of making sure that nothing can discard it. However, each one costs a threat every time you move, and there is a maximum number of threats that you can have, which is equal to the number of companions that you have on the table. So with 5 companions, the maximum number of threats is 5, and so next round will be the last time that he can move with 2 copies of this. Otherwise, he will have to start discarding. Interesting. That's right. So Quincy is also running tentacles. He plays the Thrashing Tentacle with no Marsh on the table and immediately gets it thrown away. It's hard to say, but I think Quincy might be struggling. Looks like Watcher did come out at one point, which is where we see all these wounds on the Fellowship. Not that they matter because exhausted wraiths can't take wounds, but it's an interesting matchup. So still far ahead being used to play the Fellowship's next site. City gates being added. So when the Fellowship moves to the site, add 3 threats, but you can only add 1 because there's only 1 companion. And then when the Fellowship moves from this site, remove 3 threats. So I guess, you know, from Smeagol's perspective, threats are not really, well, a threat because there can never be more than 1. And they only come into play when a companion dies. So if a companion never dies, he never has to worry about it. And if this companion dies, well, he's got bigger problems. So Evil Smelling Fen's coming out, which is a golem card that makes every card on the adventure, or every site on the adventure path, a marsh, which of course is very handy here for these setups. So we have Guided by One Purpose being used by Mozdref purely for the Burden edition. There is a second clause here. You may make the Free People's player discard a tentacle to shuffle a warrior card from your discard pile into your draw deck. And since all 3 of these are Thrashing Tentacles, they would have been, you know, pretty much identical. The choice was pretty much made. However, Mozdref prefers not to use that particular aspect of the card. Instead, just using it for the burden applications. So with 3 Thrashing Tentacles, we're once again in a situation where Smeagol may be a little bit in trouble. So that's 18 strength versus his 6, enough to overwhelm. He's going to have some pump to get through, but all 3 of these are fierce, and so he's going to have to solve this particular skirmish twice. He could, of course, have another couple copies of Power According to His Stature, which in his case will just be hitting the snooze button on this because that will be putting all 3 of those tentacles back on the deck, back on that Outer Dark Waters. So we have Where Shall We Go being played. If you have initiative, discard 2 cards from hand. Wounded minion, Smeagol is skirmishing twice. So it's being used on one of those Thrashing Tentacles, and that is recycling it back. Bringing it down to... Oh! He had nothing! He had no nasty, no nothing, and bringing that from 18 to 12 was just enough to bring it just barely down to the doubled strength, and Smeagol gets completely overwhelmed. Looks like Quincy did not have his deck on his side. The draws were not on his side, rather. So hopping over to Basmelis versus Chadwick, we have Basmelis' Beasterlings being used. Discovered, discarding Tail of the Great Ring to ensure that can't come out to protect a Hobbit later on in the game. We have both Easterling Captain and Easterling Army out. Both of them pretty much exactly the same sort of thing, where Easterling Army, rather than burning Twilight, is able to burn its own vitality instead, to make someone get strength on their side. So we have 2 burdens in play. So that's 2 exertions that can come off the Easterling Army, granting +2 strength. And then we have Easterling Captain being able to remove 2 Twilight to make someone strength +2. So that's a floating +4 with the Raider Bow on both of them. Oh, and since they are both fierce, that first assignment is going to add 10 Twilight, which means that Captain would be able to add a grand total of, that's 10 more. So actually, that's just about everybody that would get eaten here, I think. Because Galadriel's going to die straight up no matter what they do, and then that's enough strength to be able to overwhelm Boromir or overwhelm Glorfindel. Looks like Chadwick saw the writing on the wall and went ahead and conceded. If that Tail of the Great Ring had been around, it's possible that Frodo could have tanked one of the dangerous skirmishes. But then on the first skirmish, he would have been left all alone. Chadwick saw all this coming and went ahead and conceded. In Inolan versus Wingfoot, we have Wingfoot had his Bilbo set up, and it looks like, just like before, Gimli and the other one that he started with have been winnowed away. Yeah, Pippin and Merry. Galadriel holding on, managing to stick around. And then Inolan has his Elf Man deck, or Elf Estelle deck, really. Estelle, of course, being a V1 card that we buffed. It's been a while now, huh? It would have been 8 months ago? I'd have to look at the timeline. But so his ability was shifted to a skirmish ability that allows you to discard any elven card from hand to make Aragorn's strength +2 or damage +1. And so typically what people do is that they will bring all sorts of niche elven toys, and then either they use them in their intended niche, or they will use Aragorn's ability to still get a use out of them and survive or win a skirmish. We have Bow of the Galadrim here on Legolas Greenleaf. Now, Greenleaf did receive an errata some time ago, away from his infamous Gatling gun ways, to make it so that every time he uses his ability, he must also exert a second time, unless he bears a ranged weapon or you can spot more minions than companions. In compensation, we removed the clause that made it so that when he used his ability, he no longer added to the Fellowship Archery total, meaning that if you exerted him and ended up exerting a second time, you would still end up getting 2 wounds out of him, but one of them would be an undirected arrow that his opponent got to choose. However, with Bow of Galadrim placed on him, he's right back up to his old ways, and in fact, he's a little bit buffed from the original Legolas in this form, since he'll be able to exert up to twice to place wounds wherever he wants, and then get an additional bonus 3rd arrow without that clause canceling that out. Which is exactly the intent here, was to make it so the Greenleaf was a little bit less of a splashed omni answer to any sort of minion problem. And now you have to invest a little bit in them. Interestingly, Gollum being used once again for that burden removal to add a whole bunch of Twilight. We have Host of Thousands being used. What did he need the 8 Twilight for? Host of Moria coming out for 7 Twilight, playing a Goblin Sneak. That's right. This particular deck that is being played by Wingfoot is the one where Galadriel Lady Redeemed using Narya and 3 for the Elven Kings, cycling through the deck and trying to stack. There we go. Lost of the God. Oh, wow. Okay. Hang on. While I was trying to explain what was going on, he pulled off what was going on. So we have Gollum Darkest Darkness being used to exert the Ring Bearer, and then we have, how many copies of Lost of the Goblins were played here? We have 1, 2, 3 being used, and that's 9 burdens, boom, 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 all enough to, to completely corrupt his opponent. So when Ettenmoors isn't ruining his day, Wingfoot shows off that Lost of the Goblins bomb is still a very potent response, winning here on site 4, even with Ettenmoors on the table. So I think that leaves us with all of our games complete. Couple of explosive matches there. Round 3, which I believe will be the final round, coming up here in just a moment. So taking a look at the standings, we have Basmelis and Mosdref, Basmelis having won 2 games, Mosdref having won 1 game with the bye, and then Quincy, Chadwick, Wingfoot, Ratil all going 1-1, and Edelon having lost both of his games. So it looks like we're probably going to have Basmelis versus Mosdref here in the final match. And then we'll have Wingfoot and Quincy, and Chadwick and Ratil. So Mosdref and his Wraiths up against Basmelis and his Hobbits. So Basmelis bidding 2 in this case, up against his opponent's 3, so he does win the bid. And as we are now no longer in a mirror match, we have Path of the Fellowship versus Road to the Towers, so we have the Rittermark being played. Exert 2 Unbound Companions to play Aragorn from your draw deck. That interestingly works very well for Wraiths, because they want to be exhausted so that they can take advantage of their invincibility, and this allows them to pull Aragorn out. And of course, pulling the Wraith-centered Aragorn, driven by need. While you cannot spot 4 threats, Aragorn is strength +1 for each threat, and then exert Aragorn twice to remove 3 threats. So he can modulate the number of threats that you do have on the table, and so long as there are a limited number, he gets that strength bonus. As we can see, he's now strength 9. So I would have gone with you to the end being played. Each time you play a skirmish event during a skirmish involving a companion with the Aragorn signet, you may spot Aragorn to stack that event here, and then you can use those events later to boost him up. And all these Wraiths have that Aragorn signet. So moving on to Buckleberry Ferry, we have ourselves the Easterling Regiment coming out, those 3 burdens on Frodo, making sure that Easterling Polearm makes him invincible to any sort of wounding action. Swept Away, not yet on the table. And so these exhausted Oathbreakers here. What was that? End of the game. Are you going to load? Game? Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. What's going on here? Yeesh. Shoot. Where is... Okay, here we go. Hopefully that was just an issue on my side. Okay, well, we completely missed what was going on. We have end of the game getting played, making exhausted Gondor companion strength +2, and then if that companion wins the skirmish, heal that companion and make him or her damage +1. So we have all those copies of end of the game being used to pump that Oathbreaker up. I thought I saw him at 16 strength or something, enough to beat his opponent. Well, we didn't get to see it because the internet was acting weird there. Am I still streaming? Am I just talking to the void? Okay, well, hopefully that was just a temporary hiccup. All right, well, Basmelis setting up his support area, not quite as feverishly as he has in the past. Maybe I spoke too soon. Evil Smelling Fens coming out, guaranteeing that Mosdraff will not have any problems with that marsh, at least until Bilbo discards a tail to discard a shadow condition from an opponent's support area. There are a few tails here now. Red Book of Westmarch, Tail of the Great Ring, Promise isn't a tail, but so that's 2 that Bilbo can use during the Fellowship phase to knock one of those out. Oh, and Mosdraff doesn't play any tentacles, meaning that nothing gets stacked on those dark waters. So it's going to be possible for Bilbo to wipe those out. Normally, Dark Waters has a clause that allows you to discard some of the tentacles that are stacked on it to prevent it from being discarded, but not going to see that here. So King of the Dead coming out. We have Saga of Elendil being played on King of the Dead, which is, you know, appropriate. That additional vitality going to be useful for the fact that he is enduring. Still no Swept Away getting played. So we have that Small Hope coming out. Easterling Captain. No weapon yet. And no weapon at all. We were at the start of the maneuver phase, so looks like that captain is going to be going in unequipped. There are 2 burdens, and there is a little bit of Twilight here on the table, so it could be that he's just relying on the... Okay, let's see here. So we have that Discovered coming out. Exert a Raider man to discard a Free People's condition or 2 Free People's conditions if you spot 3 burdens. You could spot 3 burdens, so that Saga of Elendil goes away, and that I would have gone with you to the end getting discarded with all those stacked events on it. Definitely dismantling a little bit of that setup that Mosdraff had gotten going. Unless something changes, I imagine that the exact same thing is going to happen next turn with that Bilbo coming out and wiping all these out. So we have that protection clause on King of the Dead. If Aragorn is about to take a wound in a skirmish, exert King of the Dead to prevent that wound. So here we may see just a repeat of that with Captain going up against Aragorn and then King of the Dead absorbing the wound, making himself exhausted. Which, with that enduring, sticks him all the way up to strength 6. He was 16. What changed? Huh. At any rate, 13 now. So Mary being used, now pulling Tom Bombadil. Removing 2 burdens with the Master. Sam being used to pull a Hobbit Sword, since Sting is already here on the table. So that's going to go on Sam. Everyone knows coming down. So we're seeing here a very different strategy for where exactly these items are being played. In the previous game, we had all of them being stacked up on Pippin to make him as large as he could be. So you had a single individual that was very strong. However, here, I think the weapons are being spread out a little bit more so that we have a wide coverage of hobbits, which is sensible when you are up against a swarm. 2 copies of A Promise in play. We have 2 Hobbit party guests. Interestingly, Bilbo not being used yet to burn down any of that support area. Perhaps he thinks that he can weather the storm well enough here early on in the game, and he'll save those tails for later when it will hurt more. Perhaps inviting his opponent to think that he has made it safe and he can discard those additional copies, perhaps. Thrashing Tentacle losing its skirmish and adding 2 burdens. Then we have the second Thrasher coming out, and Basmelis intentionally allows Pippin to take that lump on the head. That's another reason too to not make sure that all your eggs are in one basket. He needs to have somebody who can lose a skirmish and yet survive, so that the Thrashing Tentacles do not have their way with him. Four burdens now on our Frodo here, which is going to bump Easterling Captain up to the next level of effectiveness. So with that Raider Bow, that's going to be ambush 5, meaning that in this very first skirmish, that's going to be +6 strength that can be added to Captain, so that brings him up to 17. Then there's this small hope that can pump him all the way up to 19. And there's still no Swept Away on the table, meaning that we have all these exhausted wraiths. Captain's going to get a regular win, does not need to utilize any of his abilities, and that's going to make the next skirmish all the more dangerous, because on the second skirmish, the Raider Bow will once again add 5, meaning that there will be 10 on the table. But here we go, Red Wrath being played, wounding that King of the Dead twice, and with no Swept Away on the table, that's going to be 2 dead wraiths. Dead wraiths? Dead undead? No Mere Ranger being utilized. That Red Wrath ate up 5 whole Twilight, so Captain doesn't have quite as many resources, but at the same time, it's not like he's using this Twilight for anything else. Really, I think that was just Monstref getting it out of his hand. So, one very devastating round of skirmishes here. King is gone, another Oathbreaker is gone. Things are teetering on the edge there, I think, for Monstref's Fellowship. On the other hand, Basmelos' Fellowship here, getting that Hobbit Hospital all built up. A third Hobbit party guest, another escape. Hobbit Sword coming out on Pippin. Mary is now our designated loser, I think, with 5 strength being just under the threshold to lose to a Thrashing Tentacle. I think the only ally that we're missing at this point is the Gaffer. PC Fellowship has quite a lot of anti-ally tech running around, but that doesn't appear to have made its way up to PC Movie. At least not enough to ward Basmelis off from going with an extremely ally-heavy strategy. Let's pop into these other games real quick. Okay, so it looks like Chadwick versus Ratil ended on... What happened here? Oh, right. The server was lagging. There we go. Yeah, I was like, that game couldn't have ended on the second site. How could I have missed that? Yeah, let's refresh both of these. Okay, so both of these look like they're trundling along with that Balrog strategy from Chadwick and the... well, I'm not sure I ever actually really saw... Oh, no, this is the... No, this is Ratil. I'm actually not sure what Ratil's shadow is looking like. Nazgul. That's right, Nazgul. We saw him. We saw him earlier. But I'm going to hop back to Basmelis versus Mozdref because this is the... Okay, what did I miss while I was doing that? Let's see. So we did have Bilbo get utilized. He discarded the Out of Dark Waters that had things on it. Oh man, I should not have moved away. It looks like a decent amount of stuff happened there. We have Basmelis pulling out the V2 Balrog, and it eats 2 companions alive. Things are not looking good for Mozdref. His fellowship is getting picked apart, and it looks like his shadow is getting kneecapped as well. Hobbit Hospital showing its name. We have Old Bilbo's heir being able to heal an ally, and we have the Hobbit party guests all healing themselves and then exerting themselves to heal other Hobbit allies. Elbereth coming out on Frodo. We have that Farmer Maggot being used to heal up Merry and or Pippin. Evil Smelling Fens coming out. There was another copy that must have been deleted by Bilbo. Making sure that the tentacles did not have a leg to stand on. Two Writhers and a Fowl coming out. Fowl pulling another one. A Thrashing Tentacle in this case. We have Gollum Stinker also here. Strength +1 for each burden, and each time he wins a skirmish, you may add a burden. So that's an 8 strength Golem there. We've now got 5 companions here, or five minions up against 4 companions. There is, of course, always Tom Bombadil lurking in the shadows. So at this point, he could exert 5 times to save a hobbit from a skirmish, and that will be the only time that he will be able to do that for this game, unless there's a way to heal him up, which... yeah, this is just for a Hobbit ally, and Hobbit party guests can only, yeah, they target Hobbit allies, so neither of them can heal up Tom Bombadil. So here's our assignments. Looks like we are making sure that the Thrashing Tentacle wins his skirmish up against Merry. Once again, that 5 strength Merry being the designated loser. So now you have a choice here. With that Writhing Tentacle, you could stick it on Merry. Actually, almost, it doesn't matter where that Writher goes, because wherever that Writher goes, Tom Bombadil is going to cancel that skirmish. So, first Writher getting wounded by Sam and getting rescued by Out of Dark Waters. Foul Tentacle got overwhelmed, so there was no wounds being applied, so it was unable to happen there. And then we have our Mary here. Oh, interesting. Okay, Tom Bombadil being saved for later. Bounder being used right now to keep him just outside of overwhelm range. And then Thrashing Tentacle once again knocking Mary on the head rather than granted a loss and thus another burden. There's some interesting needles that need to be threaded here. And here comes the Swept Away. Well after all of the wraiths have already themselves been swept away. Too little, too late. In fact, can you even play any of the wraiths anymore? Okay, you can play the Oathbreakers. Those don't have a spotting requirement. They just have to add a threat. But King of the Dead there cannot be. Well, obviously it can't be played again. He died. Another copy of I Would Have Gone With You to the End coming out. There's Basmelis. I already said that joke, bro. And here we go. Easterling Army with a pole arm coming out. 15 strength. This has got to be it for Mozdrev. Mozdrev calling GG. Letting his opponent take that final kill. And it looks like Basmelis is once again at the top of the pile. Making sure that so Basmelis here already has an invitation to the World Championship, given that he was champion last year. But he is here at these events just making sure that he is the one on top, therefore gaining the most points, therefore making sure that his opponents, his potential opponents, get as few points as possible, trying to keep that playing field as unfair in his advantage as he can. Yes. Okay, so now let's take a look over at these other two games. We have Quincy Jones and Wingfoot up against Chadwick and Rutiel. Let's watch this Rutiel game because I'm not sure that we have followed him all that closely. So we have here a Gondor and Dwarf combination. Actually, that does sound familiar. This is the guy with the preparations, right? Yeah, preparations and Realm of Dwardelf. Yeah, he's got himself a big deck. That preparations being quite stacked up with 3 copies of Slaked Thirsts. Ah, yes, because you want with Chadwick's largely Balrog-based shadow over here, you want the ability to burn through all of that 5 vitality. So 2 copies of Slaked Thirst will do it, and then discard the preparations with that 3rd copy of Slaked Thirst on it, and that will be enough to kill the Balrog whenever he shows up. Now, from Deepest Dungeon here, adding threats, those have added up. There's 8 threats in the pool, with 8 companions on the table. If Chadwick can pull off 1 kill, just 1, which, admittedly, with that lethal combination here of Slaked Thirst and preparations, it is possible, because the Balrog's ability there. Oops, that's the wrong discard pile. That's Rutiel's discard pile. So each time the Free People's player uses a skirmish special ability during a skirmish involving the Balrog. So that counts down here. This preparations is a skirmish special ability. So if Rutiel were to make the mistake of assigning the Balrog to one of these dwarves. So from Deepest Dungeon being used, removing 0 threats to play the Balrog from his discard pile for -0, just to get him recycled there. Gollum Old Villain burning here we go, burning that Evil Smelling Fens to pull Inquea out. Oh no, it looks like three threats were used for that to bring the Balrog out. So now there's 5 threats on the table. Slake Thirst being used to make sure that Inquea can't do as much damage as he could, but that's one. Yes, one is all he needs because there was that one exhausted dwarf on the table. So now 5 threats go on the table, 4 of them onto Isildur and 1 onto Smeagol. Another copy of Slake Thirst being used for the Balrog. A second copy being used to ensure that the Balrog is exhausted. There's no more Twilight on the table, so the Balrog's not going to be able to add any more threats from his ability unless Free Peoples gives him some more Twilight here during the skirmish. What a tightrope. We have ourselves a 21 strength Balrog who is exhausted. I don't know. Each time you lose initiative, you may wound a minion. Rutil is sitting here at 5 cards in hand. If he gets 2 cards out of his hand, he'll be able to wound either Inquea or the Balrog. From the armory, exert a dwarf and stack a Free People's card from hand here to prevent all wounds to that dwarf. The Balrog gets to wound him because of that ability, but if from the armory is used a second time, he's going to lose initiative again. Discard a card from hand to make Golem strength +1 or +2 if skirmishing a ringbound companion. I think he's doing that just to cycle out his hand, or perhaps it was a misclick. Discard a card from hand to make Smeagol strength +1. Yeah, causing him to lose initiative, which triggers Hardy Garrison, which kills the Balrog. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. So now we have Realm of Dwardelf being used 3 times, which will pump him up to 11, and then he'll need some other source of strength if he's going to win that skirmish. Active Era board, discard a Dwarven condition or a card stacked on a Dwarven condition to make Gimli strength +1. There we go. That'll be enough to get him up to 12. That 12 is enough to beat Inquea. Inquea evaporates. So that's an awful lot going on here. There are only 2 Dwarven Vitality here available to restack preparations. So Gimli is going to be exerted to put a Slake Thirst on there. Sindri is probably going to be exerted to put another Slake Thirst on there, but then it's all out. You can't put another copy there. A couple of threats being added, 3 threats being added for Seeing Stone of Orthanc to draw a card. He's adding those threats himself. Granted, given that he is at a sanctuary, next turn he's probably going to ensure... Oh my goodness. Is he going to go all the way up to the threat limit himself? Discard 2 cards from hand to exhaust a minion? Just doing that to cycle out the cards that he knows are not going to be utilized? He's on a bit of a tightrope walk here. He's definitely utilizing his resources to the fullest, but that could come back to bite him. Citadel of the Stars coming out. We have Nenya going on Galadriel Lady Redeemed. And then moving out to Osgiliath Crossing. Not quite enough companions to be able to utilize the text, although Chadwick himself will be able to use it. Fat One wants it. Each time Gollum or Smeagol is played at a threat, discard this condition to return Gollum to its owner's hand. And then we have that out of sight and shot as well, being able to use to recycle a Nazgul from their skirmish. Let me move all these over here. Darkest Darkness coming out with the ability to turn those burdens into Twilight if he needs, or he can exert twice to wound Frodo. I should say and/or. There's nothing stopping him from doing both.
9 Twilight left. He's probably considering whether or not to burn out of sight and shot now. Could pull Enquea. Could pull Nelia. Oh, instead, Atea is used to wound an ally, and using that to wound Arwen so that she cannot pump up Aragorn. We have Ring of Asperity. When you play this artifact, you may wound an unwounded companion. And then, as soon as that happens, Gollum then exerts to exert Frodo, putting a couple of wounds on him, which is something that Twilight Nazgul really care about. Not this one, but Atea is normally one of the worst Twilight Nazgul. His ability of wounding an ally for 6 Twilight is not fantastic, considering that the other Twilight Nazgul get things like damage +1 and Fierce, or the ability to directly wound the Ring Bearer. I wonder if he needs an ability, something like, instead of just wounding once, you wound once per wound on the Ring Bearer or something. Still very niche, but at least it would be potent for that 6 Twilight. Okay, so Aragorn doesn't care about our big old Nazgul and knocks him out. Or maybe it was Glorfindel. I was not paying attention. Morgul Duin goes ahead and double moves with that Gollum on the table. Gollum has already exerted himself, so there's not a whole lot that he can do. And lost his skirmish, so not a very useful Gollum. Remove 2 threats to play a Nazgul from your discard pile. It costs us -2. Looks like we had that Morgul Whelp, was it? Morgul Squealer? Yeah, Morgul Squealer. Discarding himself to play the Witch King from the discard pile. So it looks like he did remove a threat to take a card into hand. What did he...
Pulled Return to its Master. So it looks like he's trying to go for a win by tackling Frodo to the ground. We do, however, have Tale of the Great Ring on the table. We have Nenya being used to heal Frodo up and try to keep him outside of that range where Nelia would get much more dangerous. Resistance becomes unbearable, getting played to add some of those exertions back onto Frodo. He needs 2 more if he's going to be able to utilize that Return to its Master. I believe. I'm not getting it mixed up, am I? If the Ring Bearer wears the 1 ring at the end of a skirmish phase. Ah, yes. So this is going to be combined with the other card that that resistance becomes unbearable. If they are exhausted at the time it is played, then the 1 ring is put on, which means that you can play Return to its Master later. But I don't think it's going to come together here for him. Chadwick is on Site 8. Managed to keep Frodo a couple of vitality away from being exhausted. Aragorn eating Nazgul for breakfast. Glorfindel about to do the same. Yep. Is that a stacked Sauron? No, the Balrog. Just as good in this case. -14 strength. And then Boromir over here doing something a little less glamorous, but just as necessary. If for the flex, if nothing else.
This is probably the last game, right? Yeah, no, we still have that other game going on between Quincy Jones and Wingfoot. Wingfoot, however, is completely decked out. Looks like he attempted to pull off the Lost of the Goblins bomb, got as much as he could. And now we have a just 4 cards in hand up against a miniature swarm of just 3 tentacles. One of whom is damage +1, one of whom is fierce. Looks like unless those 4 cards are particularly potent, Bilbo is probably on his way out there. So, Ratiel taking his Sanctuary turn, healing up as many of those dwarves as he can. Looks like Durin has come out as well as Sam. Or was Durin already out? That's a lot of healing. If he was not already out. So Ever My Heart Rises being used to discard a whole bunch of cards off the top of his deck, getting them into his discard pile so that he can pull them using other effects. Ratiel has discarded his entire deck. He is trying to get everything down into the pile so that he can retrieve it. He is likely trying to set up that return to his master play. If he can get the perfect hand going into Site 9, he may be able to pin further to the ground. Usually he also likes to pack Helpless to go up against Sam. This tail could be a problem for that Nazgul win. There are not all that many Nazgul skirmish events. Sheila of her leadership coming out, making sure that Aragorn isn't used. We have Morgul Duin, remove 2 threats to play a Nazgul for discard. No, up here. Let's go to the crossing. Exert 2 minions and spot 6 companions to draw 2 cards. So Shelob is an interesting addition to this deck. And here comes an Inquea. Slake Thirst ready to neutralize most of his ability, but you could exhaust Gimli there. Just to make sure that there is somebody on the verge of death. There's 8 threats. So once again, it's all down to just trying to get one person cleared off the board. The other copy of Slake Thirst being used. We do have the Citadel of the Stars that can be used for an instant kill on either one of these, if necessary. Shelob, though, with all of her vitality being well outside the range that is possible to handle with that, there is another fortification that can be used, 4th level I think, that will exhaust a companion, but that is not on the table. Given the nature of Ratiel's deck, it is probably in his discard pile. Well, looks like Wingfoot did indeed concede. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, okay. So there wasn't enough to wasn't enough, he thought, to manage to take out that Solo Smeagol. His deck had been completely burned out. Okay, so the assignments have happened over here. We've got Gollum. Gollum's ability, discard a card from hand to make Gollum's strength +1 or +2 if skirmishing a ringbound companion. So all sorts of cards are being discarded on Chadwick's side, pumping Gollum up to a point where Sam can be overwhelmed. Oh wait, but he's not doing it during Sam's skirmish. Interesting. Okay, so we're going to see the 8 threats come out. Aragorn being sacrificed. I suppose now the only thing that matters here is the Dwarven Vitality to stack things, but at the same time, I don't think that Ratil is going for a Fellowship victory here. He's trying to preserve as much vitality as possible. Presumably, or no, he wants to keep the companions on the table so that he can use No, Singstone, it doesn't work if there's no cards in your deck to draw. I think this might just be habit. Trying to be as efficient as possible with your resources. Even though, realistically speaking, it's going to be a shadow victory or nothing. He's 2 sites behind. He's not going to be able to run all the way to site 9. Yeah, I'm not sure that I understand the point of juggling this, unless he's going to try and run again. We don't know specifically which 4 cards those are. I would assume that they're shadow-based. Now, wait a minute. How did he get a helpless on there? Oh, you can stack any card from your discard pile there, not just a Free People's card. Well, why would you specifically put those cards on there? Is there a way for him to take a card stacked on a Dwarven condition back into hand? That sort of looks like he's stacking up his preferred shadow hand. I just don't know how he's going to get it out of there. Oh, here we go. What was that? Rest by Blind Knight. Shuffle any number of Dwarven conditions and all cards stacked on them into your draw deck. Okay, all right, there we go. So there's the strategy. He uses all of that Dwarven Vitality, not just for habit, but specifically to stack a whole bunch of shadow cards onto that last Dwarven condition, then shuffles it and everything stacked on it into his draw deck. He draws all of those cards that he just had, meaning that he specifically chose what he hopes is his perfect shadow hand going here into site 9. Was there an event? We have Ringwraith and Twilight, or Alarian Quea. We have Resistance Becomes Unbearable in a maneuver phase. We have So Polite is a shadow event, not a skirmish event. We have Otsia. We have Helpless. Those are all. We don't have any skirmish events. That Tale of the Great Ring might be make or break here. Darkest Darkness, exerting Frodo, getting him down to 2 vitality. We still have Nenya available to try and keep him a little more healthy. Resistance becomes unbearable. Will there be another one? Is there a second? There's the second one. So he's going to exert Otsia here. He's now exhausted. He should now be wearing the One Ring, yeah? Where does that show? Does it show on here? Exhausted puts on. Is that not listed anywhere? Do we not have it?
Yeah, we don't actually have the status of whether or not the ring is on. That's obnoxious. Okay, Citadel of the Stars being used to reduce Enquea's vitality. Return to its master, assigning Otsia to Frodo. Yeah, 9 to 5, and we have Boromir here to pump him up, and we have Tale of the Great Ring. Yeah, I'm just not sure that okay, we do have. Oh, there we go. So there's the skirmish event being used. Okay, that was enough. All right, what was it? It was all veils removed being used, making him strength +5 if the One Ring wears the One Ring. Okay, yeah, well, that was in fact enough. Ratil getting his win there, and I believe that is the very last game of the tournament. There shouldn't be any more. Yeah, no more rounds for that. Let's go take a look at those final standings. Oh, geez. Where did it go? Here, up here. So Basmelis going 3 for 3 in all of his matches, earning the most number of points. However, once again, he already has the the invitation, so the points are really just a way of denying his opponents the ability to get them. And then we have Mozdrev, Quincy Jones, and Ratil, each with 2 wins and 1 loss, and Chadwick, Wingfoot, and Enolan each sitting at 2 losses, 1 win. All right, excellent. Congratulations to the winners, and thank you very much to everyone who tuned in and everyone who played. We will be having another one of these events here in a few hours. It is just about 10 o'clock my time, so in about 2 hours and 15 minutes, there will be another event for the American time zone. So I will be back at that time, so I will see everybody then.